So hi, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday webinar series. And this evening is brought to you by the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee of the Green Party. And we're proud to present Degrowth by Monetary Reform, money for the people, by the people. And as the late Bernard Lataire said, since the dawn of times, monetary systems have been shaping the flows of human activity in every realm of endeavor: food production, education, health, business, etc., by determining how we value, apply, and exchange our creativity and the fruits of our labor. It is for this reason the most influential of all human-made systems. And of course, this operates on multiple levels, the physical and psychological. As important as money is, however, in our society, we're not taught anything about the monetary system. So our brains will have to be creating some new neural pathways for this information to travel on. Poverty, homelessness, war, and more are all public policy choices. And our public policy process is dominated by money, more specifically by those who control the creation and allocation of money, the finance industry. And it's an awesome power intentionally shrouded in mystery to protect the private interest to control it. However, the cat's out of the bag and the word is spreading. This evening, we'll be examining two monetary systems. One is the private system of temporary money that systematically drives economic growth and has dominated the world now for 300 years. And the other one is the one that Green Party platform proposes, a public system of permanently circulating money. The legislation to change this system is already written and ready to go. We have a panel of 4 people here to talk about how changing the monetary system can transform the economy and end the toxic economic growth now devouring our world. Our first panel member is Greg Coleridge. Greg is the co-director of Move to Amend, a board member of the Alliance for Just Money, and he's the author of The Depth of Change, Selected Writings and Remarks on Social Change. He's written other books too. He currently maintains and distributes via email a weekly real democracy history calendar and monetary history calendar. These are excellent. He previously served an elected term in the National Governing Board of Common Cause and was a principal in the program on corporations, law, and democracy, POCLAD. With further ado, Greg, take it away. Oh, you're muted, Greg.
Some would say that's an advantage. Well, thank you very much, Howard. Appreciate the invite, and thanks so much to the Green Party Banking and Monetary Reform Committee. Fish to Discover Water Last is a little anthology that was put together by some people of the works, mostly written articles of Richard Grossman, who is the co-founder of what Howard mentioned, the Program on Corporations, Law, and Democracy. It's a metaphor for how we live in a corporate culture and yet don't realize it since we've experienced nothing else. Similarly, we don't really fully, do we, understand the larger economic, political, and social realities that we have spent our entire lives living within. That is, without reflection, without a study of history or a study of other countries that are dissimilar to ours, or have lived or immersed ourselves in other countries. And this is especially true when it comes to our economic and political systems that are interconnected. They shouldn't be treated, unfortunately, they have been for too long separately, because they are inextricably connected. As Louis Brandeis, former Supreme Court Justice, said, we may have democracy or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. We take these interconnected systems as givens, as they have always been this way, always will be, and impossible to alter in any fundamental way. That's what the power elite, the owners of this country, want us to believe and act or not act accordingly. and maybe the most neglected, misunderstood, confusing, and intimidating economic issue areas around involves money, our monetary system. One of the three core economic tools, really, if you think about it, of our federal government. Governments possess the power to tax and spend, but they also have the power, as stated in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, to coin money and regulate the value thereof. To coin or create money is one incredibly powerful ability. The colonists did it. Lincoln did it. In both cases, they were successful in their respective ventures. But the owning class hated government-created money. They wanted the sole power of money creation. Thus, the 1913 Federal Reserve Act accomplished that. Banks were given the power to create money with far less reserves and virtually, in many cases, almost no reserves to create money out of thin air, in fact. Oh, and it's created as debt via loans. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I do know that P is less than P plus I. P for principal, I for interest. And banks create the principal, but not the interest. Money owners thus profit enormously from money loaners who must pay interest. And paying back that interest means the people with the debt have to work longer and harder to generate extra income. That means more products and services, more growth, and that growth has over time become exponential. Never mind fish, but most of us are underwater with massive debt. And I'm not only talking about individuals, but governments, whether it's local, county, some states, although many states are required to balance their budgets, but certainly the federal government. And it's the super rich and financial corporations that rake in interest payments from those who owe them interest. Again, individuals, governments, and even many businesses, certainly small businesses, but even medium and large businesses are in debt to the bankers. And their Federal Reserve has gotten into the act as well, which is created beginning in the 27 through 29 financial implosion, upwards of Bernie Sanders estimated at least $29 trillion to bail out the banks. Money at low interest that big banks used to buy smaller banks, becoming, as they say, too big to fail. But there's still more. Banks not only have, as Howard mentioned at the onset, been given the power to create money, but by extension, the power to decide how it's distributed. They decide, not us, not the public, not we the people, not those we elect to represent us, where bank loans go. And that's resulted in speculative housing by the private banking industry in the 1980s, more recently in cryptocurrencies, and of course, to fossil fuel corporations that have used that to extract oil, gas, other coal that's destroying the climate. Where bank money goes is where the most money is to be made. Wherever the greatest growth can be generated, more drilling, more plundering, more soil depletion due to more agribusinesses, more stuff produced, thus more waste and externalities that gets dumped on we the people and the public. More, endless more of everything that is collapsing the regenerative ability of nature. Constant growth, in fact, is baked into the current debt-based money system. And of course, more profits that leads to more political influence, right? It's no accident that the finance, insurance, real estate industry leads all industries in political donations or investments, depending on how you want to look at it. Banks own the place, quote unquote, as Senator Dick Durbin candidly and refreshingly admitted to a few years ago. More recently, Professor Gerald Epstein said that, quote, the banking cartel has hijacked U.S. democracy in his new book, Busting the Bankers Club, Finance for the Rest of Us. Being indebted means being dependent. It's a modern day serfdom in which we all, as well as all governments and most businesses, are beholden to the financial sector and the super rich. That's power. The source of all this power, be it economic and political, is to create and distribute debt money. Yet, Victor Hugo said, quote, nothing else in the world, not all the armies, is so powerful as an idea whose time has come. The owning class, including the banks, have planted the seeds of their own oligarchical demise. They have claimed for decades that 1, banks don't lend their deposits, 2, the Federal Reserve is a public institution, and 3, the federal government creates all of our money. None of these, however, are true. However, all of them will be if real monetary reform, authentic, legitimate monetary reform is enacted. You'll hear soon from Mark Young about the NEAT Act, and maybe later from panelists or people who are on this call about the American Monetary Reform Act from the Alliance for Just Money. Both are fundamental reform proposals, proposed federal issue laws that would in reality achieve what has been myths, but presented as facts by the ruling financial elites and the complicit economists and corporate business press. We need to thank them, in fact, for making it much easier for us now to widen and deepen what is a powerful idea whose time has come, to democratize money creation and distribution that meets the economic needs of all of us, to end the endless growth paradigm, and to ensure that we, the people, not financial elites, decide our ultimate health, safety, and welfare future through justice in all of its forms in a livable world. I'll just simply end by saying, what's happening today is not inevitable or irreversible. It's not like gravity or an eclipse. Our monetary system has been designed to exploit people and the planet and has been working beautifully and perfectly to do just that, to make a very few, very rich people economically rich and politically powerful. But what has been intentionally done can be undone. And that's up to you and me. Now's the time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Greg. And yeah, that was good. That was really making it clear. And next we have Richard Cook. Now, Richard Cook is a retired U.S. federal analyst who served with the U.S. Civil Service Commission, the FDA, the Carter White House, NASA, and the U.S. Treasury. He blew the whistle on the flawed O-rings that destroyed the shuttle and documented his story in the book Challenger Revealed. And after serving in the Treasury, analyzing their books, he exposed the disastrous flaws in our monetary system controlled by private finance. In his book, We Hold These Truths, The Hope of Monetary Reform. His latest book is Our Country Then and Now, Clarity Press this year, and monetary history woven into his own family's unique history, which goes from the beginning of the country. So it's very interesting that way. Richard, you take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. Very glad to be here tonight. This is my newest book. Looks backwards from here. Our Country Then and Now. It's a history of the United States, and it has several dimensions, but the one that's most pertinent tonight is that I trace in this book the development of the U.S. Financial system, particularly as it affects the operations of the U.S. government, but also brings us up to the present time and the financial catastrophe that we are facing. If I could have the first slide in my PowerPoint, possible to get that up? Okay, this is what I'm going to talk briefly about. I'm going to focus on the Federal Reserve System because this is the heart of the matter, and we really need, in my opinion, to understand how this came about, how we got to where we are today. And basically, over the 400 or so years of American history since the Europeans first arrived, half of that was without a banking system. The first bank did not come into existence until 1780. And that was the Bank of North America during the latter part of the American Revolution. from that time, it took the banking system 133 years to complete its total takeover of the economic system of the United States. And of course, as we all know, particularly if you've worked in the government, he who has the gold rules, as that famous monetary theorist Ronald Reagan put it, the people who control the economy control the government. Nothing happens in the government without the clearance, go ahead, and profits accruing to the financial holders of the monetary wealth of the nation. And as you can see, and as Greg pointed out, it all has to do with interest on debt, which is called usury. Because of interest, the debts were always much larger than the supply of money. And that dynamic accumulating over decades, over centuries, involving millions and billions of transactions, gradually the monetary controllers take control of the entire wealth of the society. And because of the scope and reach of the United States, that means taking over the entire wealth of the world. And that is what we're looking at today. We formed a little bit of a institution, as you can see there, the American Geopolitical Institute, where we are studying these things and writing about it. And there's the website for it. We're on the vtforeignpolicy.com website. VT stands for Veterans Today. And that's where you can find our writings, including this presentation. Okay, can we go to the second slide then, please? I'm not going to get through all of this tonight, obviously. But let's just go through this. The net effect of the Federal Reserve System with its foreign counterparts and the so-called collective West, every nation has its own privately owned bank that runs the economy, is to extract wealth from the world economy in order to support the power, incomes, and lifestyles of the financial elite. This is done through usury. Usury is defined as lending at rates over and above the cost of doing business, using the fractional reserve method of banking combined with compound interest. When you hear printing money, we're looking at the fractional reserve method, where the banks have the authority given to them by the Congress of creating money, quote, out of thin air, unquote, and then charging as much as the market will bear for the use of that money. And we've had estimates that as much as 50% of all of the prices that consumers pay for commodities is cumulative bank interest that enters in at every stage of the production and distribution process. And due to the interest on these loans, there is never enough money in circulation to pay the outstanding principal plus interest. And this is the basic mechanism of elite control. I think we should look at four different main results of this system. Number one, endless war, because that requires government borrowing from the banking system to finance war, and also it requires war against other nations to collect debt that is owed to our banks by these other nations and to secure and take control of their resources. Now, volumes could be written about each one of these statements, as you well know. The second main result of the fractional reserve banking system are massive discrepancies of income, where the elite at the top who control the system always have vastly more resources than the people who do the work at the bottom of the system. You then have constant growth of goods, services, and prices, and this is called inflation, to maximize the velocity of money. And this is very little understood by even economists, that you have to keep up with the interest payments of the debt within the system by spending the money as fast as possible, as long as you have it in circulation, because that is the way you create the interest to be paid back to the banks. It's also the way the government increases tax revenues. And if you ever hear anyone say that the government is trying to reduce inflation, that's simply not true. I worked for over 20 years in the Treasury Department. The best thing that could happen to the government is inflation, because all taxes are geared to income and cash flow. And so the more prices go up, the more your tax revenues go up, and the less of a debt liability the government will incur. In fact, I told our local mayor, I said, look, you guys love inflation. He was really mad at me, but it's quite true. Inflation always gives government more revenue, so they're always in favor of it. Then number 4, you've got the cyclic creation and collapse of asset bubbles. The Federal Reserve System was supposed to eliminate the business cycle of debt, growth, and then collapse. But of course, we all know that hasn't happened. We're now seeing a new asset bubble. And it just so happens that if you go back through history, these asset bubbles are always timed with election cycles, because the government in power always wants the stock market to go up in order to maximize the vote. And we're seeing that happen now with the Democratic Party trying to boost the stock market before the November elections. Okay, I'm not going to go through much more on this page, but let me just go down to the bottom. There was a time in Western history when usury was outlawed due to biblical prohibitions, and this is what led to the prosperity and price stability of the High Middle Ages. And I want to point out too that along with the Christian religion, Islam also forbids usury. So let's flip over and go to briefly to the next page, if we could please. The alternative to the Federal Reserve System is to treat credit as a public utility, not the plaything of the elite. And as Howard has mentioned, and as we're going to hear later on, the NEED Act proposed in Congress in 2011 would do this. I have a personal stake in this because back when Steve Zarlinga was here with us and heading the American Monetary Institute, I worked very closely with Steve at his request in adapting his ideas to what we call the American Monetary Act. Steve and I also began to work very closely with Congressman Dennis Kucinich. And in 2011, Dennis introduced in Congress the NEED Act.
Richard,
And what the NEED Act is basically is to take greenback funding that was used during the Lincoln administration to update that and to make that the basis for direct government spending for federal government requirements, particularly focusing on infrastructure.
Richard,
And it's 9 minutes, so I'm going to end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just to go through what else you'll find here, you'll find this presentation on the webpage for the American Geopolitical Institute. I'm not going to try to go through all of the detail later on. But people ask, what can I do? And basically, there are 2 things that I recommend. One is get out of debt, because any individual who is in debt has made themselves subject to the Federal Reserve financial system, and the financial system is always going to be ahead through collection of interest payments on your income and assets. Secondly, learn about all these issues that we're talking about tonight, especially from the Green Party and the NEED Act, which they've adopted in their platform. So that's about it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Richard. All right. Let's see. Next, is Mark Young here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good, good, good. Hi, Mark.
How you
So, yeah. Mark Young is a consultant and housing developer, and he's the author of a book called How to Fix the Future. And it's a small book, but it's a book on cooperative economics and advocating for a debt-free public monetary system. Mark is a founding member of the Alliance for Just Money. He's the former treasurer, and he's a member of the core group of the International Movement for Monetary Reform, IMMR, which is a collection of about, I think, almost 30 groups, isn't it?
Mhm.
So trying to make this move in countries around the world because it really is a global issue. And with that, Mark, take it away.
Thanks, Howard. As always, welcome to everyone. I think what I want to talk about is not as much the NEDAC. I think Richard gave a great, real quick summary on that and what it's enabled to do, and it's easy to read up on some cliff notes that's on the Alliance site. What I want to talk about is a little more of the international aspects to monetary reform. Greg mentioned some of the effects of our current monetary system on the U.S. population. And if you look at the effects on underdeveloped countries across the world, it's exponentially worse. And so I want to take you a little bit out of the United States, which is the richest country with the largest economy on earth, and just talk a little bit more about what this system does to undeveloped countries and also the other countries that are developed, which are in similar situations or have similar economies to the United States. So as Howard mentioned, I'm a core member of the IMMR, the International Movement for Monetary Reform. We are kind of an umbrella organization for, I think, 32 or 33 organizations across the globe, most in different nations. So probably at least 28, 27 different countries that have organizations, some large, some small, some as large as 15 or 20 people, some 2 or 3. So it varies, but our goal really is to create interaction between the groups and work to build a worldwide movement. I think Richard also mentioned that this is a global system, that the U.S. is at the head of it, which even though we have our problems here, the U.S. also reaps most of the benefits from it also as well. And so the thing I think that's most important about monetary reform and to the subject of degrowth and how do we degrowth our economics is the monetary reform issue, and it's an international issue. As we all know, underdeveloped countries are overmined and almost subject to a low-wage slavery because of this monetary system and what this monetary system does to capitalism. It infects capitalism. Capitalism has its own problem, but the monetary system makes it exponentially worse. And so the type of things that are important to degrowth is a country's ability to provide for its citizens. And I don't mean provide in the sense of, unlimited whatever. I mean provide in the sense that they can invest in sustainable resources, infrastructure, housing, things that people actually need. These things can be done with a sustainability model in mind. And one of the reasons monetary reform is so important is that it does directly relate to sustainability, because the private industries, the vast majority of them, have no incentive for degrowth or using sustainable resources or sustainable technologies. One great example are oil companies. There is no benefit for oil companies in increasing solar production or increasing windmills or all the other renewable technologies that are out there that can support degrowth. But monetary reform can, because monetary reform, as its underlying principle, basically states that everything in this world is not a profit operation. Everybody knows that streets are built off our tax base. The only time you see streets that are toll roads are the only time that they are actually constructed for profit. But taking care of our seniors, schools, all these things that require taxation also require a profit model in some sense because you have to have revenue supported. Monetary reform gives us the ability to go outside that and just operate within the productive capacity of a country. And because it can do that, it can be that sustainability monetary system that we need to implement the type of degrowth things that we're talking about, along with all the other issues that it can help to solve. The things that are so important that it has to be a balance, I think a balanced approach in that you cannot talk about just degrowth and sustainability without talking about helping the less fortunate at the same time. They have to go hand in hand or I don't think they will be accepted. The question is, how do you go about doing those things? Do you go about doing them in the manner we've been doing them, or do you go about doing them in a sustainable manner? I'm pretty sure this group would probably say that a sustainable manner is better. And monetary reform, the NEED Act, and things like that provide a mechanism to do that. Every country around the globe has some type of enabling legislation, if they have a central bank, that allows private money creation from private commercial banks or central banks or whatever, however it's structured in that particular country. So every nation has to undertake a similar type of activity that we are doing in order to raise the awareness of monetary reform issues to their governments, because governments and we the people truly do control this. It's just a matter of education and whether or not we can get the majority of the population to stand and demand changes. The war efforts and everything else, and just the general hegemony of the U.S. and other Western countries all over the underdeveloped world is put in place and maintained by this monetary system. The fact that a sovereign nation, Argentina, Venezuela, Nigeria, whatever country, Haiti, where we see so much death and destruction right now, do not have the ability to create money as needed for their public, to their public capacity, to create jobs and help the population is just ridiculous. It's long outdated and it needs to be corrected. Even the UN, through its international covenants on economic, social, and cultural rights, delineates many, not many, but very specific items that should be provided to every citizen of the world. The reason these covenants cannot be enacted is because of the monetary system. The monetary system doesn't allow it. And so I don't want to take too much time because I think Richard and Greg covered great topics, stuff like that. So I'll close by saying that I wanted to thank the Green Party for having the courage to bring these type of issues and actually put monetary reform on its platform, which is extremely courageous. And I wish everybody knew it and it was promoted more. But the international aspects of monetary reform are real. This is a global monetary system. If the U.S. did a monetary reform, it could very well have a domino effect on the rest of the countries across the globe. A smaller country that doesn't have the economic superiority and the reserve dollar that the United States does would quickly face sanctions from central banks and from governments. We've seen this when Zimbabwe tried to do it, when Venezuela has tried to do it, just pretty money. So I say that to say that this is an international movement and that people should stay connected and realize that the effects of monetary reform outside the United States are even greater than the effects on the inside of the United States. So with that, I will end and you can move forward. Thanks, Howard.
All right, thanks, Mark. That was really good. You touched on a few things there that I wanted to highlight, and that was how it is a global system, and that what we need is for countries to take back their monetary sovereignty so they can take back control of their resources and for the benefit of their own people instead of these a few international corporations controlling it all. So that's really a wonderful vision that IMMR is carrying forward, and that we're doing our best here in the United States to make that first domino start falling. Next, we have Fernanda Lugo. And she's from the Alliance for Just Money. And she is a social media and outreach director for the Alliance. And she holds a master's degree in biobehavioral health, a field at the intersection of health psychology, promotion, and policy. She advocates for monetary reform to reprioritize the well-being of the earth and human health. She's organizing the May Day for Money rally and march on the Chicago Fed on May 18th, which we'll be talking about. So Fernanda, please take it away.
Sure, thank you. Shout out to all the great speakers who have very well explained who we are and the monetary reform movement. So I'll just kind of skip through that. Where's the button? There. So, oh yeah, I am, just to check in with everybody, I'm super exhausted. This past week, I was at the Bioneers Conference, spreading the word and carrying our banner for Just Money for the Just Transition to highlight the intersection of monetary reform and how it relates to all of the other environmental causes. So, and I met an AMI friend there.
There you are.
Yeah, so jumping right in, I am on this panel to hype you all up for May Day for Money, our march and demonstration of people power over the money power. And I'm going to kind of explain our theory of change for how all of the lovely reforms that my fellow panelists have described, how we are actually going to get there. And it starts with bringing together our coalition. You can see some of our allies and partners on this slide that have already partnered for May Day, and we're still gathering more. And we all need to come together to question the validity and usefulness of our current monetary system, as we have done, but also acknowledge that there are many branches of the movement striving for monetary justice and economic justice, and we can't do this alone. So first step is to come together, and we're going to be having a march from the Federal Reserve to seed a new future of money towards a better economy. So these are some of our flyers. Oh, that's in the wrong order. Okay. So we have a call out for all organizers, citizens, land stewards, and we're kind of bringing together everybody and hoping that the many dimensions of why we want economic and monetary justice can shine through. So some of these you can see here, just democracy, like Greg mentioned, the big issue of corporate personhood and money being used to influence our elections. With just money, we can have a just democracy. Already mentioned, degrowth and the circular economy transition is very likely, very possible, and I'm optimistic about it for getting a just transition through the use of just money. So we'll be talking about that aspect. There's also the just peace. Some of my panelists have written lovely essays about how there's a connection between banks and bullets and how the money is really fueling the wars that we're seeing. So big connections to bring forth to the people and just kind of showcase the large umbrella of reasons why we need to reform this, because it's one of the core disruptions in our social treaties. So there's also for just equality, and I'll jump over, yeah. So these are kind of the flavors of May Day for Money. If you think of any organization that works in these areas, please share this with them. There are paragraphs on our page, monetaryalliance.org/Mayday, and you can read the descriptions of each of these. So I already mentioned also dignified life. We see the battle in the US to get fair wages for unions, for universal health care and education, and abolishing student debt and food justice. Those are all branched under how our economic justice can help us get a dignified life, and just money is a real pathway for the institutions that and services that allow us these dignities can be funded well through a sovereign money such as just money. So these are the many reasons I advocate for just money reform, and I hope that one of these flavors at least lands with somebody and they will go ahead and sign our petition. Other one to highlight, and we'll have lots of teach-ins between now and May to explain more about these. There's, for real equality, there's of course the issue of racial injustice and redlining, the core economy, the care economy not being paid. So gender equity and equality can be achieved through as well. Money for the people, by the people. Yeah, so shout out really loudly to our allies, Move to Amend, who are the first to join on to help us make May Day a reality. And so they have more discussions coming up about war and occupation tomorrow. And they have a really great petition. If you haven't signed it, they're really getting their bill out there. Just transition. We need to go further. The real magic about how just money works for the just transition is kind of like Mark said, we do need there to be a way for us to pay for the Green New Deal, as some have called it, or the green transition. But also it's a really easy way to turn off the tap on all of the money that currently still goes to fossil fuels, beyond the divestment movement that is for fossil fuels. Having the just money get rid of the growth imperative can also help us with the transition of green agriculture and the large use of land and forests that is part of that. So kind of just giving you a sneak peek on all the flavors. There will be much more to describe on our live stream on April 17th. So be sure to subscribe to our social medias and watch us explain all of the reasons why we need this just money system. Our most recent ally to sign in, Ecological Economics for All, may be joining us, and anybody in the room can also get involved to be a speaker. Oh, yeah, totally going out of order. It's been quite a day. So also a really cool thing that we'll be showcasing in the May Day is our screening and discussion of this great documentary that shows us how we can change the system. So we often hear change the system, not the climate. This documentary really shows us how, and that's going to be screening at the Climate Action Museum. So join us in Chicago. We'll also have a hybrid version for y'all to watch it in case you're not joining us in Chicago. And this, I envision, was going to be one of our biggest hooks to get people coming to May Day, because it's one of the most visible crises we're facing. Certainly feels that way since I was at Pioneers and everybody's really woke about the climate over there. But there's so many solutions that we need to do that are going to need investment, such as deforestation. Just money can help us pay for protecting the forests. Am I running out of time? Sorry. I just hear somebody talking. Okay. Okay. Also wanted to recruit y'all. We have a creative segment of May Day that is, and yeah, please mute whoever's making noise. So yeah, we are also making a creative for May Day.
Joe, you can mute everybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you some time back,
This is
all
very
right?
disrupting.
It needs to turn off the background.
Yeah. so
Everybody
when-
needs to
when you
unmute.
Get the background out, I'm gonna give you my time back.
Yeah,
I'll
everybody needs to unmute. Everybody needs to mute except the speaker. Somebody is letting their radio or TV on, and we don't want to hear your radio program.
Okay, okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, we appreciate your voices, but we appreciate your voices even more if you come to the participative event that I'll be hosting next Monday. We are creating a collaborative art piece, which is part of the Unity Through Creativity peace building and leadership actions that we have. And it's going to be called The Singing Tree of a Just and Democratic Economy. This is kind of the process of discussing the themes and everybody participating in the mural. So if you want to be like one of these happy people in the picture, please come join us. This session is online, but you will be able to make one of the, man, the screen ain't working. One of the little leaves that is added to our collaborative mural. This is an example of a previous singing tree, and there is a whole forest of them if you go to Unity Through Creativity. So I am an artist facilitator in this, and I will hop back to the screen where I show you what our draft looks like of what our banner for May Day of the singing tree is going to look like. So this is the singing tree of a just and democratic economy. And we are growing the economy through our coin that no longer serves us. We are breaking free from the bondage of the coin and realizing that the path to a better exchange is through the ways of nature, and like the hermit crabs that generously exchange their shells, and the crows that generously give gifts to those who feed them as well. We need to get off this cycle of planetary destruction and walk the yellow brick road towards the fields of gold that are promised to us if we follow the ways of nature. So basically what we're going to be doing in the creative session is you are going to help participate in drawing your own vision of what a just economy is on one of these hands, leaves, currency, coins, or birds. So yeah, please join that. I'll share the link in a minute when I get this stuff in order.
You have about 1 minute left.
Yeah. Copy. Just sharing this link to our event. Oh, that didn't work. Somebody share that. And I think I'm done. I'll just share that you can also get a bunch of merch from us to support the Alliance for Just Money and our march. We're gonna have some stickers. We have this bookmark that basically you can give to anyone on the street and they'll understand what you're talking about when we say that banks are creating money out of thin air. And change our money, change our world. This is what we want. And we are going to be chanting, Mayday, Mayday, they silence us with lies. We know you've been making up the money we despise. We've got several other chants and songs that will be a part of May Day. And if that excites you, this could totally be you holding up a banner for us in community, in generous exchange, sometime in May 18th, 2024 in Chicago. So please contact us and get involved. These are, again, our allies, and we want more and more partners to make this a really big march for all of the reasons that we need just money. And I will end there and take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernanda. It's great. Yes, I'm hoping to see everybody there. I have a room in the hostel up there, or a bed in the hostel, I should say. Not hardly a room. And let's see, I think we have some scheduled comment at this point, and we'll be moving into the Q&A section of the program now. If you have any questions. And I believe we do have someone that is scheduled to make comment here, but I'm not sure I see her name right here off the top of my head. Lauren Filla or Fia. Are
Hi,
you here?
yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to comment on behalf of the St. Louis Green Party. Is that okay to go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. And I wanted to appreciate a couple things from the title real quickly, especially degrowth, stand up for economic justice, and money for the people by the people. So I was going to use this time to briefly talk about what that means for colonized people and reflect on the history of how the US and Europe built our wealth, which is on the enslavement of African people and accumulated wealth from stolen labor on stolen land. Considering things like we have the predecessors of Citibank that amassed a huge amount of wealth from slavery on sugar plantations, and the predecessors of Chase Bank that actually took slaves as collateral and then took ownership of those people when debts weren't paid. And we have that same type of thing happening now with US corporations going in and colonizing the world and so-called renewable energy farms, like forcing people to work for like $1 a day to extract cobalt from dangerous mines. So the Green Party of St. Louis, we believe we have to degrow our consumption and not just replace growth with renewable growth. And also that economic power for the people has to mean economic power for colonized people, which means the US military out of other countries, US corporations out of the global South, reparations to African people and colonized people to build economic power and self-determination. And I just wanted to say real quick too that we can rebel against that system now, even before there's monetary reform, by giving reparations through things like the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. I'd encourage people to look up the Black Power Blueprint, which is part of the African People's Socialist Party. And yeah, just say that the St. Louis Green Party, we believe we have to degrow our consumption, and we believe in economic justice through reparations. And I would just add real quick that there aren't really underdeveloped countries. There's overexploited countries through colonialism. And thank you so much for the program.
Yeah, Lauren, thanks. And of course, that's what monetary reform is about, is really getting us in control of public policy so we can do those things and fix things right and change our land use policy, all of that stuff. It's an amazing power, and it belongs to the public. It shouldn't be a private system. Do we have any more questions out there amongst our participants?
Hey, Howard, be sure
Yes.
to recognize Chris Mann to say a few words about what's happening a month from now.
Oh, yes, yes. Chris, are you there? Please announce about the May 1st B&G webinar. Yeah, these are a monthly thing, folks, and they're good programs.
Sorry, my screen jumped just when it was my turn.
Ah,
So when you think of May 1st, you think of what holiday? Anybody know? Just
Mother's
shout it
Day?
out.
May
Day.
Labor Day.
Yeah, Labor Day.
May Day.
May Day, celebrated by workers all around the world. And if you look at what day of the week that May Day is, that May 1 is, it's on what day of the week will it be on?
Saturday.
No. What day of the week is May 1st on this
Wednesday.
Wednesday? So where should you be May 1st on this year? You should be
Not at work.
Not at work, and you should be at the Green Party webinar series, of which there will be a webinar called Degrowth and the Shorter Work Week. The speakers include an auto worker, a worker from Germany, a member of Teamsters for a Democratic Union, a gig worker. And do all workers love their working hours? Overwhelmingly, no. So will you be able to celebrate May Day right here at the Green Party webinar? Hope you will. See you then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I see we have some hands up for some questions. Let's get to those. Elizabeth Fatah. You are muted.
Okay.
There
Can
you
we-
go. Hi.
Yeah, I'd like to have the comment on Bitcoin. What do they understand about that? Actually, there's, I believe, one country in Latin America that has gone and their monetary policy on Bitcoin.
Yes.
So I'd like to have a comment on what your lecturers
Sure.
would think about that. Thank you.
Anybody in our group want to take that on? I don't
Harold,
mind.
could I just say, look, I lost
you
my
go.
computer.
All
This
right.
is Richard Cook. Just very briefly, Bitcoin is a form of script. Script has been around for centuries. It's a type of community currency that anybody can create, and it can circulate as long as it's accepted in trade. Bitcoin is not accepted as legal tender. It's always subject to government attack through taxation or restriction or other means. So it's a very interesting form of exchange, but it's certainly not a replacement for monetary reform through a legitimate public currency. That's my take on it.
Right. It's basically a virtual commodity, and it's controlled by the big money. Okay, we have Jeff Rootsell. Did that answer your question, by the way? I'm sorry.
Yes, you did. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thanks everybody for putting this on. And one of the things that concerns me or bothers me is that reaching enough critical mass of people that these changes can, in fact, be implemented. If we keep playing whack-a-mole with this thing and that thing, getting together in webinars where we sing in the choir is not a bad thing to do. However, we need to find a way to reach the masses. And my theory is people understand intuitively that life is more important than money. Right now, our value system is predicated on money, not life. If people can get that understanding that life is more valuable than money, that can give them an incentive to listen to how we can have these changes.
You're right.
That's my theory.
Yeah, it's really a moral argument, isn't it? We need to do these things that are the right thing to do. Right now, what we have is a system that kind of extracts all the value away from productive capacity and doing things right.
If I could add one other, sorry, Howard, if I could add one other thought, we're in a place of tremendous change in human development.
Yes, the first cause of money right now is personal gain, and we need to change the system to the first cause being for care, for public care.
Not care, life. You see, we substitute these
care
other words.
Yes, that's what
not care of life. Life. Let's make this. Here's my theory. Let's make this a religion. At these points in time, new religions come up, and if people start to, if I can use the term in a non-religious sense, if people start to worship life, they will understand that money is no longer valuable as life, that it is just a medium of exchange.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what we want it to be, just a medium of exchange. Yeah, you're right. All right. We have Elizabeth Green.
Thank you. I put in the chat one of my questions. What would be the consequences of environment protectors swapping biodiversity credit and environmental currency for more popular goods and services? And along that line, for example, the environment protectors could sell their clean air to the people who make money out of thin air. And my other question would be, so what if everybody were paid to say wear an Oura ring collecting data, and that data goes to the National Institutes of Health, and you simply get paid for all of your healthcare data, and you don't have to do anything because you're wearing a wristband that's taking your pulse and all the information that we need in order to learn more about people and make better healthcare system. Over.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have, who's next?
Do we have an answer to that question?
I didn't catch the question.
What would be the consequences
Of
what I mentioned?
Of this
Those are
system
my
that
ideas.
you described to us? Well, you
Yes.
tell us, it's your system.
I don't know. You're the experts.
And well, we have a specific proposal for changing the monetary system so that we can get public control of public policy. And right now it's all controlled by the corporations, who are controlled by the banks, who are controlled by the big hedge funds like BlackRock. And of course, they don't have much respect for life. And so we want to change that system so that we have a system that dignifies people and life.
And that's all in the NEAT Act?
Yeah, actually, it's going to, the NEAT Act is an amazing bill. I recommend you search it and read it and take a look at it. Also at the Alliance for Just Money. Actually, I should put some links that I have in the chat for everyone to the Alliance, and it has a wonderful bibliography there that you can find a lot of information, way more information than you probably would want. But every aspect and almost every argument that has been made for and against it. And let's see, do we have any other questions up there that I'm not recognizing at this point?
There's Barbara and a Rachel.
Oh, Rachel?
And Barbara.
Rachel and Barbara. Okay, Rachel.
Hello. Hi. Hey, thank you so much for this webinar. I've been a Green since '92. I just love this group. So the previous kind of commenter was talking about the sanctity of life, and one of the things I think about, or one of my kind of like little phrases, is life will trump capitalism. And I just believe that, you know, when the objective conditions get worse, we're gonna click in to what that former commenter was speaking about. We're gonna understand the, you know, the sanctity, like you say, the religion of life. So two things is I'm a high school teacher, and in 12th grade, I'm in California, and in 12th grade we have a semester of government and we have a semester of econ. And I sent this webinar, just the announcement of it, to the econ teachers. And it's really, you know, if you don't want to talk to the choir, maybe do some trying to think of outreach, or you probably already do, to high schools, because high school teachers are always looking for interesting curriculum and different things. And if you could maybe come up with a little 1-page, maybe 2-page worksheet that goes with webinars, and then you can present it to teachers as like a ready-made lesson. Then literally they get to sit back and kind of chill, and their kids listen, and they do the worksheet or whatever, and then they have a discussion. That's really attractive to teachers. And what you're trying to do is not just teach the kids, but really teach the teachers, because in my experience, teachers don't know a lot, and they don't think about a lot, and they're just not in the movement like we are, obviously. So that's one comment. And then my last kind of comment and a question is, and I don't really know about economics at all. I do environmental stuff, so I live it. But it seems to me that when we're a for-profit economy like capitalism, just by nature, with capitalism, you must have growth. So if we could go to a nonprofit, like Americans, we understand the nonprofit world, we like nonprofits. Is there a way to go to a nonprofit economy, and thereby you're not having to grow and find a place to put your money?
Well, that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Changing the money from a system of growth in debt even, and so extracting wealth out of that growth, to a system that's debt-free, not profit. It's issuing permanently circulating money so that your money just never disappears into some rich person's bank account. It's constantly circulating.
Thank you so much for your comments, Rachel, and your idea to take this information to high schoolers. I take that to heart.
Yeah.
I work as a substitute teacher often, so sometimes I've tried to show the kids the memes I make and try to gauge how much information they already know. But I think we do need to start with the teachers too. Yeah, I think if you have more questions on how the American Monetary Reform Act and what this thing we call just money would work. I think that the presentation I did back in December on just money for the just transition, I was pretty clear on, like, we have this system as Greg was describing, we create the P, the principal, but the interest is never ever created by the banks when they're giving out loans. So whoever is the loan receiver is just caught in this web of needing to create more and
Yes,
more
that
and
is,
grow their profit motive.
that
And
is the
that is where the greed comes from in my book. Also, just the
it's also the
psychological
systemic driver of
yeah.
growth. You see what I mean? Because everybody's racing to pay the interest out of the principals.
Mm-hmm.
So it
And that
drives
also just
growth.
leads to the psychological issue we're having. Like, if you see everybody only giving when they're going to get something back, we have this society that is not generous. And so I do see just money as a road to a more generous and gift modeled economy. And there will be a blog post coming out soon about that as well. So I do encourage you to keep checking out what we're throwing out there on the Alliance for Just Money blogs and social media. And yeah, it'd be lovely to talk more about all this if you can join our creative session on Monday and really just get really abstract with it, because sometimes we need to go deep into our own personal values to stay motivated in this movement. And we'll get to the root of why capitalism sucks, and that is money is the real reason. Passing the mic.
It's really, I've always been arguing that capitalism and the debt money system are the same thing. They both emerged together back 400 years ago.
Howard, could I make one other comment? Richard Cook here.
Yes.
The Federal Reserve has figured out the NEED Act. They call it quantitative easing. And I hope to have an article coming out soon on the American Geopolitical Institute that explains that. The trouble is that what they're using it for is the $1 trillion military budget. So it's not simply a matter of how you allocate the money, but we have to be weaned from endless war. And that's a whole major undertaking that all of us have to be very, very engaged in.
Right. We've got to get off of the right makes or might makes right train.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. So looks like Barbara, you have a question?
Actually, I have a question for Richard. In your talk, I really liked the phrase treat credit as a public utility, but I was wondering if you could clarify that a little bit more. I think I understand what it means, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this is a phrase that we've been using in the monetary reform movement for a couple of decades now. If you look at Ellen Green and her work with the Public Banking Institute and her proposals for a federal government infrastructure bank. The idea is that money and credit is not the private property, or should not be the private property of the financial industry. It should be viewed as a utility, just the way clean water is a utility, clean air is a utility, energy should be treated as a public utility and not operated on a for-profit basis. So it's very similar to a lot of the other ideas that have been expressed here. It's kind of the grease that makes the machine run. And so it should not be dominated and controlled by people who are trying to extract profit from it. So does that make it any clearer?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I see Rita Maniotis. Hi. Did you have a question, Rita? Oh, can't hear you. There you are. No?
Could your volume is off on your computer?
I don't know. Rita, is your volume down on your computer? It's just not coming through. Sorry. Sorry, Rita.
Her question is in the chat now. Can something
okay,
be done
good.
at the state level? I think Mark might have something to say to that.
I didn't see the actual chat. What was, let me see.
Can something be done at the state level? Well, since we do have the bill, you could go to your city council or state, county, whatever level you want to, and pass resolutions. And at this point, they might have the symbolic value and educational value that would help bring this movement forward. That would be useful. Thank you for the thought, Rita.
One thing that the Public Banking Institute heavily promotes is state public banking. Their model is the Bank of North Dakota, where the state will actually deposit tax revenues into a state-owned bank and run it for the benefit of the state industry and agencies. And so, yeah, a state can do this.
All right. Yes. Bruce Wall, I see you're there with us. Good to see you. You're muted. Bruce, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All
there we
right.
go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was going to say something about public banking, which has now just come up, but I wanted to say something about it in relation to what was also said about the need for a critical mass to support this. And I think that the public banking movement is one of the ways for developing that critical mass, because of its 10 years of record activity at the state, regional, and city level, and so on. So that's one comment. It was a question, but the other comment that was made about the religion of life, and that brings up for me the issue of belief and ideology, and of the power of the belief systems that have been promoted by market fundamentalism and by capitalism itself, the free market, especially in the United States. And it feels to me as if one of the if you will, the fronts in this war, or in this conflict, in this campaign, has to be the belief systems of people. And So I'm just adding that to the comment about religion. My background supports that, and the fact that for America, for the dominant the masters of the universe in America, the belief in the private sector, in the private free market, is so powerful that we're not going to get a change until that belief is undermined. And so one of the ways I think that that can be done is to, again, focus on the masses, and focusing on the masses means focusing on those who are so affected by the current system that they already know there's a problem. They don't have to be convinced that there's a problem in order for change. So I'm just adding a voice for that kind of mass outreach. It's not a question, I'm sorry, but it's a comment. I also wanted to say something about Greg Coleridge's post. Is that enough? I'm sorry, I'll stop.
Yeah, how about one more minute?
Well, he in his post on the AFJM site added that money reform requires a parallel movement on behalf of democracy. And that I support 1,000%. And I've been saying that at AFJM or AMI, that we need a parallel movement that will support genuine justice, genuine equality, and genuine acknowledgement that every person is valuable, that personhood must not be stolen by the corporate person. And that requires a campaign on behalf of every person, a personhood, and the equality of us as persons. The power of the people against money, the power of life against money, means that we have to come up with a way of talking about democracy in a way that isn't just laughable or isn't a counterfeit. And there are people who do that. So that's my final minute.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I agree, but I also think that monetary reform is kind of synonymous with democracy. The Greeks 3,000 years ago recognized that issuing the money was an absolute must for democratic self-governance. And so they really are coincidental.
Can I respond to that, Howard, just
Sure.
in a second? I don't think that most people understand that equation. In fact, monetary reform is far more complicated, and it's deliberately complicated, as we all know. So I feel that maybe for the Greeks it was obvious, but in this country it's not. And I feel that in support of monetary reform, we need to, again, Greg identified this as a parallel movement, if you will, a parallel change. And I would like to see on the Just Money, the May Day Just Money banners, a kind of a way of talking about democracy that is not just tired and old and it completely ignores the counterfeit offered by the free market, which is conformity, that we all should be alike. So we are a country that has no idea what democracy is anymore. We think it's just, everybody gets a vote. And unfortunately, that's not it. So
that's not it. Yeah, that's right. Because if you don't have a government that issues the money,
precisely,
you don't have a government.
Right.
You have banks governing you. So that's where we're at. And I see Kevin McCormick here with a question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I unmuted. Okay, well, I kind of want to follow up on the topic, on the discussion here with it, looking at it from a different angle. And I want to hear what the speakers might have to say about the concept of universal basic income. And the reason I bring this up is because if you create money, you have to issue that money. It's no good to create it and leave it in the basement. It has to be issued, it has to be distributed. So who is going to control the distribution of money? Because I think that is right along with the creation of money. I think that that's also another aspect of, this this power that money gives certain groups and people. So the reason I bring up a universal basic income is that, like Social Security, which I think is a form of universal basic income, people who receive it and who incorporate it into their household economics or their household life, they're going to value it. And I mean, corporations are happy to receive subsidies. The banks are happy to receive subsidies. So I'm just saying that if the government issues money directly to the public, then that is a fair way of distributing the money. But it is also a way that truly promotes democracy, because people are going to vote to protect their benefits from the government. And I don't think that it would be inflationary. But anyway, I just wanted to bring it up from that angle and see what the panelists had to say about that. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, definitely. Of course, the NEED Act includes certain things about getting money to the people. For instance, 25% of all of it created goes to the local governments and stuff like that to be used, as they wish. And that there's also I believe there was a part of it as a $10,000 stopgap to get things kicked off before government spending got out into the economy, and allowed people to have the money now. So that's definitely something to talk about there.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Okay, go ahead.
Richard?
Well, that inclusion of that dividend, it was called a dividend in the NEED Act, came out of discussions that we had with the American Monetary Institute when Steve Zarlinga was formulating these ideas. But the idea of a basic, universal basic income is a very old idea. Milton Friedman advocated for it. And you go way back in history, Thomas Paine very famously advocated for it. The Nixon administration came up with a family income plan that turned out to be the earned income tax credit. So the tax system already has a provision for a fairly low level basic income guarantee. But look at the COVID payments during the so-called pandemic saved the U.S. economy. So yeah, there's times when you need to do something like that.
Fernanda? Did you have a comment there?
Yeah, I just kind of got derailed in my train of thought when he said about the pandemic. Anyway, we're not going to get into that.
Okay. All right.
I do think that our movement banners will have lots to say about universal basic income, on the dignified life, just money for dignified life. I mentioned for fair wages, housing, and education. And we are, I think, in the works of writing another version of AMRA that includes the terminology for universal basic income. So kind of using all of our outreach powers to shape this in a way that will reach as many audiences that already have their own vision for what economic justice looks like, and hoping that some nice legislator will take it up and bring it forward to help the American people. Thanks for the thoughts, Kevin.
Yeah. Barbara, did you have another question or comment?
No, that's
or
Don.
Don.
Okay, I got a few comments I'll make quickly. One is I want to echo what Lauren Fila said about talking about underdeveloped countries. A much better phrase is working for just and democratic countries. I mean, it's not for the rich countries to tell the poor countries that they need to develop, and basically that implies following the same path as the rich countries will get you better lives, which is not really true. The second thing I want to mention is that singing to the choir is not a bad idea. It's a good idea. I remember during the right after the Cuban Revolution, Fidel didn't really have a very good idea what to do with monetary policy. And he depended on this guy, Che Guevara, who wrote a lot about, not letting the banks control everything. And so, unfortunately, I don't think that even the Green Party has a good idea. Maybe in the Green Party's program, I don't think 90% of the people have ever paid a bit of attention to it. So I think this is very good sort of discussion to have to prepare ourselves for the times that we need to take power. And the third thing I want to mention is that we need to remember that the Democratic Party is a growth party. And its program, the Green New Deal, is not an alternative to the Democratic Party. It's the essence of the Democratic Party. The Green New Deal was developed to save capitalism. And so we need to remember that, the best example of what's wrong with the Green New Deal is in transportation. The conservative capitalists call for fossil fuel cars. The liberal capitalists call for electric cars. Electric cars are at least as destructive as fossil fuel cars, just in a different way. For decades, we've known about the need for walkable, cyclable communities. That's what a degrowth economy, that's what a just money economy would be advocating. Let's say, I also wanted to mention that not using the term, I don't like the term universal basic income. I much prefer universal basic services. And the best example of that is Medicare for All. Years ago, I was saying that everybody should get health insurance, and I was very sharply corrected by a nurse friend of mine who said, we don't need better insurance, we need universal health care. And basically, universal basic income would give everybody money to buy their insurance. We don't need medical insurance, we need free medical care.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, well, I got through all that and just, I can't believe I'm done. Fantastic, okay.
All right, Don, thank you. Jimmy? I see also we have Mark and Greg are got their hands up too for comments, and I think I might.
Yes, if the banks are made a public utility rather than privately owned, how will the decisions be made on what criteria on where to allocate the money?
Yeah, well, we're here talking about monetary reform, and so public banking really isn't what we advocate for.
Well, I thought
we
that
think that
a
public
big part-
banking, well, excuse me, but public banking is a good idea, but under the current political paradigm, you can see that there's difficulty getting one.
Well, I guess I don't understand what you're advocating for monetary reform.
Well,
It's nationalizing the money.
Separating banking from money creation. Right now, private banks create our money, and we want the government to create our money, make it a public system.
So who will make the decisions about how to allocate it?
It would be Congress and people that they would empower to do that. Because Congress is the spender of the nation's money. Now, the nice thing about having Congress do that is that currently the banks, they don't want to fund infrastructure, healthcare, nothing like that. They don't want to do anything like that. They're all about making money, making us sick to make more money, things like that. But getting control of public policy by getting control of the money system, taking the power away from the banks, it's just a matter of law, right? Money is just a creature of law. And so it's just a matter of changing the law to create a public money system. And the bill, as we were pointing out, is already written.
It's probably a little more convoluted than that, but
yeah.
I'll stay right now. Banks
don't be afraid of simplicity.
Banks can still loan to businesses. What we're talking about is that the government having the ability to create money for public benefit. So banks will still underwrite your local McDonald's or whoever. So that doesn't go away. It's a different system where the federal government does not have to borrow money to spend money. It can create the money it needs as an asset instead of borrowing it as debt from the people or from countries or what have you. But the banking system will still exist. It would just be reformed.
Yes, it would not be able to create money anymore. It would have to lend out deposits that it attracted or borrow money from the government to do it. Yeah. So Greg, did you have?
Well, a couple things. One, on this last question, there still are some tweaks that need to be worked out in this bill, and that was sort of brought up by the last speaker in terms of who makes the decision. Technically Congress, but it can it? Shouldn't be solely Congress's power to do that, because it's within their interest, obviously, come election year, to create money that's going to make them look good. So there needs to be somewhat of a separate entity that is accountable, quasi, if you will, that represents what under the Need Act was called a monetary authority that is not connected to the banking sector, to the financial sector, but also is not completely beholden to Congress.
No, right. But their job would only be to decide how much money,
how
not
much
where it
money,
was spent,
how
just
much
how
money would be created.
money could be created in a given year so that inflation and deflation
Right.
are.
The other comment I wanted to make, a few people have commented about how are we going to make this happen? How do we create if you will, I mean, this is a power question, is it not?
Yeah.
Power in part is about knowledge, education, getting ourselves on the other side of the learning curve, but it's also in terms of creating, what's the dictionary definition of power? Having the capacity to act, the ability to create what it is we want. So how do we do that? Well, in part to create a movement and to get people involved in mass. As some people have inquired how that happens, you need to find entry points, things that people can connect with already in their everyday lives, with something that is more amorphous, like what the hell is, money and monetary policy. So a couple of entry points that AFGM has spoken about and that you've seen reflected in some of the language and some of the visuals is obviously the environment and the destruction of the environment, climate change, and the plundering of natural resources. That's one. Another that every person can relate to, almost every person that is not the super rich, is debt. People are in debt. Why are they in debt? Who are they beholden to if they are in debt? Who are they actually working for in part when they are in debt? And that's not just individually, but we can connect that issue to our local governments, to those who are elected in local government. Hey, I'm from Northeast Ohio. A number of years ago, actually decades ago, Dennis Kucinich was mayor of the city of Cleveland, who tried to become independent from the banking interests in Cleveland, who had the city around its proverbial neck by bonds that was owned by the banks that did not like the policies of Dennis Kucinich in trying to democratize everything at the local level and create public ownership and maintain public ownership of the local utility company, and use that debt power as leverage to bankrupt. And they did bankrupt. So it's so important to appeal to individuals, but not just individuals, but even local public officials on, trying to, as someone, Richard Cook said, get off debt. That is so true for individuals. It's also true for local governments. And I think trying to appeal to local governments and connect that issue of debt is a way, in terms of democratizing the economy, that is super important.
Okay, great. Finish your thoughts because you're out of time.
I did.
Okay.
Yes. I think getting a movement, people understanding how changing the system is going to help them. And one of those things that I learned recently was how, because our money is all created as interest-bearing debt, it means that 50% on average of everything that we buy is interest going to the bank. 50% across average. Now that's an average. Across sectors, it varies from, garbage collection's only a few percentage, but rent is like 77%. And, there's all these different categories, but on average, the research has shown us that it's 50% of our prices.
Wow.
Elizabeth Green.
Two questions. Wouldn't universal basic income increase crime and interest rates? Would it be safer to guarantee to every U.S. citizen a living wage job and healthcare? And have you proposed your idea to the Green Party of the United States for approval or endorsement? And have you seen my idea? Did you see my idea that I posted 2 decades ago and proposed to the GPUS? And didn't get very far on a 100% taxation of all military and other violence products. And, just if you could just tax everything at 100%, then you got a nonprofit economy.
Right. Yeah. Ryan, did you have a?
Does anybody answer any of my questions?
Yeah. Does anyone have an
Answer
to
any of those? Actually,
Yeah,
3
I'm
questions.
happy to answer. I thought I didn't know who was going to answer, but I'm happy to respond with my opinion. I actually agree. I actually agree with you that I think a living wage and healthcare is probably and a job is preferable to basic income. That's just my personal opinion. But I think you can also redefine, if you have monetary reform, what a basic income is. So to me, a basic income may replace Social Security, which is a tax on working people. And so for me, I would use basic income to get rid of the Social Security tax and just use basic income to be able to provide seniors with a living wage so that they can maintain their lifestyles. So I actually agree with you. I think in some other countries, a basic income will be necessary. For instance, if you take a country that, again, I'm going to use the term underdeveloped because that's a term I use. And I think we have to, one of my questions was to get down to some definitions because I don't think we're defining it the same way. An underdeveloped country, in the way I'm using it, may need to have people go to school to learn trades in order to help do whatever they need done in their society, for doctors or whatever. While those people are going to school, they may need a basic income to survive because they will not have a job yet. So it could be used for training purposes and everything else. But in the end, I do agree with you that I think a job and a living wage is preferable to just giving people income.
Yeah. Control of public policy will make a big difference. Ryan?
Thank you. That is a good segue into the question that I have. Before I get into my question, though, I would just like to take a moment of pause. We've been in this discussion for almost 2 hours now, I believe, and we have talked about some very heavy things, and there are very heavy things going on around the world right now. And I want to acknowledge the deaths all across the board, and especially of our Palestinian siblings. This is not meant to be controversial in any means, but just to acknowledge the loss that we've experienced collectively. And in that, honoring the lives of the humanitarian aid workers who were martyred, heading back from a successful mission. So let's just take a moment for that, and then I will ask my question.
Thank you. I think we can agree that we are all here for the same reason. We need change, and our monetary system is destructive. So my question would be for, I'm guessing that Mark can answer this, although Fernanda, anyone else, please speak up. There's been some conversation in the chat, and also the title of the talk tonight, and I believe the series that the Green Party is putting on, is about degrowth. And I want to get to a question that does come up. So it is not my own question. I have a very solid understanding of what degrowth means and my support in that. But a question that comes up is around concerns about degrowth for, I would say, countries that are in the global north, and what that would look like on our production, our productivity, our economy. Not what would necessary infrastructure repairs and needs, like how would those be met, as well as in countries in what is called or considered the global south, and how their needs can be met, and that they can have access to the resources that they need using the resources that are on their land. So I will step down from my podium and just kind of throw it out there of this kind of fear of the unknown around degrowth and what that means. So
Yeah, I'm happy to respond because it kind of leads into what my comment was going to be about before. I think a couple people commented that we shouldn't use the term underdeveloped, and that it has some connotations that they want to get to a certain level of where the United States is, and that causes this exponential growth. I just want to be clear about definitions. And so, for instance, in Africa, only 30% of the population has toilets. Only of the sub-Saharan Africa, only 40% have clean water. So when I talk about countries needing development, that's what I'm talking about. I don't think anyone here, if we had a degrowth model and they don't have toilets or clean water, no one on this channel would say, well, you can have my toilet and I'll just go outside or go in a bucket. So you cannot ask people to do stuff that you're not willing to do. So when I talk about degrowth, it's on a scale. It's about sustainable growth. Degrowth, and this comes to the definition, do you mean that people should leave cities and go into country? That's one form of degrowth. Another form of degrowth should be, we need to cap the use of our resources to match what we can sustain. That can be accomplished with sustainable growth. And so I think we just have to be very clear about what we're talking about, because it can turn people away when we don't know the definitions we're talking about. And if we're not clear on those definitions, we need to make ourselves clear so that we're talking to each other and not at each other. So that's really the only point I want to make. So thanks.
Excellent, Mark.
Howard, I wanted to say that Eugene and Michael have had their hands up for.
Yes, I know. I was just about to call on
Okay.
Eugene. Eugene, are you there? Not seeing Eugene. How about Michael?
Hi, this is really great conversation. Every time I think I'm going to say something, somebody else says something, and I think, oh no, I should say this. And it's just really thought provoking. Are we getting copies of this? Are we going to get a copy of this in an email or something?
I believe so. Is that right, Don? Don't you record these? Yeah, that's being recorded.
Joe's the man doing it.
Yeah.
He's called Missouri Green Party.
It has been recorded.
He does such a good job, we're going to double his pay.
Now is the point I'm trying to make. I'd like to show this to people, and and see these ideas come out. But the idea I had about my understanding of monetary reform is that once this goes through, you know, they're going to give, you know, they're going to turn all of the bank's money, interest, profits, whatever, into U.S. bank money. And then that's what they'll have to play with for the rest of the time. They'll be playing with their own money. And then we take the U.S. bank money through the government and start funding education, healthcare, and infrastructure. And the way I see it is there's going to be a lot of people coming out of these jobs where they have health insurance to go to school to do what they really want to do. And that's where the growth is. And I just talk to people, you know, painter, construction. And what I tell them is, as their eyes roll, I say, unroll your eyes, because it's not as complicated as the NFL draft. Okay? And it has a lot more to do with real life. And that's the beauty of the monetary reform. I mean, it blew my mind when I heard about it. My mind is blown since. Now, I haven't really been active in the whole thing, but when I found out about the Poor People's Campaign and the way they were gathering their 5 pillars of injustice to work on, those are the jobs. The first thing we got to do is clean everything up and make sure everybody's got clean water. You know, and so that's where the economy starts to grow. That's where the jobs come in. Well, yeah, I'd like to give you the job, but you don't have this. Here, get into school. Call me in 6 months, 4 years, whatever it takes. And that's that's where the economy is going to go, instead of everybody chasing around trying to grab that little thing that it was never created.
Michael, you have about 30, half a minute left.
This is the real world. This is the actual world. What they're talking about is the real world, and because they're pulling the reins, it can be the real world. But the actual world is what we're talking about, where we are in the web of life and we're actually on the planet. We're not, you know, just here for, yeah. And I don't know, but I really love this thing. And I can't wait until next. I'm really excited.
Terrific. Terrific. So I see Eugene must have dropped off. I wrote him a email. I'm hoping he can get back on and get his sound up. Don, did you have another comment, question?
Yeah, I thought there's a very good question there. Just what does degrowth mean? And I have a definition of degrowth that works for me and some other people. It might not work for everybody, but degrowth has 3 parts. One is a decrease in the unnecessary production in the rich world. And by that, I mean, if the United States has the ability to kill everybody in the world 10 times, a growth economy means the United States has the ability to kill everybody in the world 20 times. I would think that most of us on this webinar could agree that's not necessary. Okay. At the same time, degrowth means the second part is the poor world needs to increase the production to provide a good life for everybody. And the third part is that the decrease in production in the rich world exceeds the increase in production in the poor world. And I want to give a good example of that. I wrote a book on Cuba that followed by going to Cuba and interviewing a lot of doctors who had provided medical care since right after the revolution. And one of the things that comes out in writing about Cuban medicine is that Cuba has a longer life expectancy than the United States and has a lower infant mortality rate than the United States, and spends 1/10 of the amount of money per person per year on medical care that the United States does. And I'll tell you that some things that Cuba does not have in their medical care system. I've visited hospitals in Cuba, and I can assure you that the hospitals in Cuba generally do not have air conditioning, they have fans. And very important difference in United States hospitals is nobody in Cuba goes to a hospital and has a TV with 500 channels on it. You know, if you have artwork, you bring your artwork from home. So Cuba does a better job of medical care by attending to the medical needs of pregnant women, nursing mothers, and children than by having exotic treatments for the most obscure diseases on the planet. And that's how they raise their life expectancy. That's what I mean by degrowth, focusing on those things which are necessary to improve the quality of life of everybody in the world and decreasing the production of crap which nobody needs.
Yeah.
That's
All
helpful.
right. So, have we come to the end of our program?
Yeah, I'd like to finish with something, if it's all right, and I'll just take a few seconds to tell this story that I heard actually on NPR. And they were studying what would happen if they gave people money, a stipend per month or a chunk of money. And they were going into villages, and I can't remember which country it was in Africa, but it was in East Africa. And what they found out was that people did better when they were given larger sums of money because they could start their own businesses. But what they found out that I thought was so fascinating, when they gave people a monthly stipend, the women in the villages started something called the merry-go-round. And so they would pool their money together and they would take turns, and each month, when it was this one woman's turn, all of the money that came in to all of the women would go to the one woman. And that was her turn. And then on the merry-go-round, the next month, all the money was pooled and given to the next woman in the merry-go-round. And I thought it was so, and they were able to start small businesses and support each other. And to me, it was so interesting because nobody told them to do this. They just figured out how to use their monthly stipend that would be helpful to many of the women in the village. So I just thought that was a great story.
Yeah, I'd love to see indigenous African women be world leaders.
Really, they thought it up themselves. So
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's been an excellent evening, and I hope everyone that has further questions will go to the websites and dig into the material that's there. There's lots of material on monetary reform. And we thank you very much for your participation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I have a comment to make for all the speakers and participants in coordinating the event. If people want to get off, that's fine. But if you were speaking, I hope you could stay on for a minute because I do have a brief comment to make. Well, I'll go ahead and make it because even though a lot of people are staying on. And that is when Howard and Steve came to me with this idea of a program on monetary reform, I privately thought in my own mind, that this is a ridiculous idea. Nobody's going to be interested in this. Nobody's going to tune in. And by the time we've done it for an hour and a half, we'll probably have 5 or 6 people, and not even the speakers will stay in the discussion. But after participating tonight, you folks have completely changed my mind. I mean, this was an incredibly great webinar. People had a lot of ideas. A lot of people were really interested in this. And I think we're going to have a lot of, I really hope that Joe can get that, the recording out, because I know that a lot of people had competing events tonight and wrote me and said, I would really like to listen in, but I can't. And I just really want to thank everybody, not just for giving a good program, but for really affecting me and changing my life a whole lot.
Thank you, Don.
Terrific. Thanks for that.
Very well.
Yeah,
thank you all. Well done.
So much. It really was great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so
I
much.
hope people
See you
left
guys.
with more answers and questions. And we're happy to do more speaking events with you all. I wasn't at my best today, going through a lot, but happy to share again the just transition with just money with the Green Party whenever.
Listen, your graphics are just beautiful. We were
Absolutely.
impressed with those. My
They
God.
sure are.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought those graphics were really good for the average viewer because they use the visual mixed with a minimum amount of words so that people could look at them and get a lot out of the graphics. And so I think for somebody, I mean, most people when they come into this topic, they really don't know much about it. And so I think those graphics were very good at introducing some of the basic concepts to people.
Yeah, and I want to say I appreciate this program so much because I think about things a lot, but it just occurred to me how ingrained this whole banking system is. We grew up with it. We just accepted it as like as God, and never questioning it. And even tonight, I was like, oh my gosh. So it was a great program. It was a real eye-opener for me. Thank you.
Let me say too that I've been dealing quite a bit with the RFK Jr. campaign, and you all in the Green Party are light years ahead of them in understanding economics and money.
Yeah. They're talking Bitcoin stuff. All right.
Okay, well, thanks again to everybody, and thanks especially to Steve and Howard for pushing this idea and for putting so much work into planning the program, recruiting the speakers, and doing everything to make it happen.
All right. Thank you so much, Don, for providing this platform, and we really appreciate it. And really like your other programs, and so hope to be participating in those too.
We'll come back again on May Day.
You bet.
And because what I say about May Day and the role of the working class, in redesigning the economy, I've been around a lot of leftist parties, and I think it's very important to, go to people who actually do the work and will be affected by degrowth, because I always say it's really nice to invite the working class to a working class revolution.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. All right.